Welcome in everybody for another episode of the Fantasy Football Truther. For today's episode, it is going to be another fantasy football face-off, this time between Ceedee Lamb and Puka Nacua, to help us determine between the two of them who we should be drafting in fantasy football. All right, for the tale of the tape, starting with Ceedee Lamb, he is 6'2", 200 pounds, 26 years old, and plays for the Dallas Cowboys. On the other side is Puka Nacua, also 6'2", 12 pounds heavier at 212 pounds, 2 years younger at 24 years old, and plays for the LA Rams. Okay, so hopping right into things, we have Ceedee Lamb going as number 6 overall in fantasy football, and Puka Nacua following closely behind him at number 7.
Fight!
Starting off with Ceedee Lamb, last year he had 101 receptions, 1,194 yards, 11.8 yards per reception with 6 touchdowns. On the other side, we have Puka Nacua with 79 receptions, 990 yards. He averaged 12.5 yards per reception with 3 touchdowns. So when it comes to round 1 and we're discussing who is the better receiver in that very limited box, very limited scope. If we look at the stats, they can be slightly misleading. You would automatically think it's Ceedee Lamb who wins the first round. But in reality, it's not just the stats. There's also the reality that when we watch the actual games, it does look like Ceedee Lamb is the more well-rounded receiver in all aspects of the receiving game, which is quite literally what he's supposed to do because he's a receiver. So it goes without saying that round 1 does go to Ceedee Lamb. We also have to look at the upside potential when we're drafting people this high in the fantasy football draft. So for round 2, we'll be jumping into a deep dive into a deeper analytic set that goes a little bit beyond just who is the best receiver right now, but who has the potential to be the better receiver this coming season.
Round 2. Fight!
So jumping into the analytics, again, Ceedee Lamb had a separation score of 2.9 with an expected yards after catch of 3.4 with an open score of 80 and a yards per route run of 2.37. On the other side, we have Puka Nacua with a separation score of 3.3, expected yards after the catch of 5.2, an open score of 76, and a yards per route run of 3.54. So when it comes to round 2 and deep looking into the analytics, it is pretty clear that this gives us a better idea of who has the higher upside ceiling in fantasy football, which again does truly matter when we're drafting receivers this high. We have seen from previous seasons a couple years ago what Ceedee Lamb can accomplish as the number 1 overall wide receiver in fantasy football. But looking into the deep dive analytics from our previous season, it's pretty clear, pretty apparent that Puka Nacua is edging him out in every category aside from his open score. His separation score, his expected yak, and his yards per route run are dramatically above Ceedee Lamb's. So when it comes to who has the higher potential ceiling based off deep dive analytics for 2025 to be the better wide receiver, we have to give round 2 to none other than Puka Nacua.
Final round. Fight!
All right, so now we're coming down to the final round, the championship round. All right, so starting it off with Ceedee Lamb. Off the bat for the first negative for Ceedee Lamb, it is Dak Prescott's health. We are not 100% certain if Dak will stay healthy this coming season, and we're not 100% certain in what capacity Dak Prescott is going to play in 2025. The second con for Ceedee Lamb is the new head coach and new play caller. So a positive and negative for Ceedee Lamb is that there is no significant run game in Dallas. This is a positive because it makes him be the main focus. It is a negative because it does mean that there is going to be more people that are dropping in coverage because they don't have to stop the run. Now, a positive for him, which ties right into the run game, is that he is the Cowboys offense. Even with the addition of George Pickens, he is still going to be the primary receiver. He's still going to be the primary everything for Dallas. He is the engine that moves this offense. The last positive for him is that they did add a viable wide receiver number 2. The last time the Cowboys had a viable wide receiver number 2 on their team, as far as I'm concerned, was in 2023 when they had Michael Gallup. That was the year that Ceedee Lamb was the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. So is there a chance that he could repeat his performance of 2023 and be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football? But doesn't really matter where Ceedee Lamb finishes. What matters is the matchup between him and Puka Nacua. For the negatives for Puka, there is major injury concerns. The last 2 seasons, he has been injured. He has not been able to stay healthy, has not been able to stay on the field. It doesn't seem that far-fetched that one injury could put him out for the entire season, and then your draft pick on Puka Nacua is completely wasted and void. Another problem that's kind of the inverse of Ceedee Lamb's situation is that there's too many weapons for LA. You have the addition of Davante Adams, you have Kyron Williams, you have Tyler Higbee, Terrence Ferguson. There's a lot of target competition on this team, and it can be an issue for him, which does tie into the next point of Davante Adams. Again, Davante Adams is part of those excess weapons. That is the negative. The positive is that now that he has a true number, I guess, 2, a true number 2 or a 1B to his 1A, it should allow him to have more routes that are more open so that he can continue to dominate in the middle of the field and down the field as well. A big positive for the Rams and for Puka Nacua is they will be a top 10 offense. It's pretty hard to imagine a world where the Rams are not possibly a top 5 offense, but at the very least a top 10. Again, from previous videos, we know we want to draft people who have the potential of their team being a top 10 offense because the upside is significantly higher. The other thing to note that no one else is talking about out there is that last year in Puka Nacua's healthy games and games he didn't get suspended, he was on pace to be wide receiver number 2 overall in fantasy football. He is a guy who has that high top-end talent, top-end potential as we saw from the analytics round. So really anything is possible for Puka Nacua. So again, to recap, round 1 Ceedee Lamb, round 2 Puka Nacua. Going into this round, it was neck and neck. It seems pretty close, but when we watch on tape, there's one thing that needs to be noted. The talent of one of these players outweighs the other. Ironically, his upside may not be as high like Puka's, but Ceedee Lamb's talent outweighs that of Puka Nacua. So for this fantasy face-off between Ceedee Lamb and Puka Nacua, I have to determine in the championship round, and based on the tape review, Ceedee Lamb is the player, if given the choice between the two, that you want to draft in your 2025 fantasy football draft. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys agree with me, disagree with me, put it down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. Until then, y'all have a blessed day.